No worries. I curse all the time when I'm on customer calls. They love it. It keeps it real. You got to be human.
Welcome to another video of Civic Group. We're doing all things Atlassian. If you have questions about that, you can reach out to me or our team. I have a guest. It's Patrick Savago. Hi.
Yes, thank you for having me, Martin. I appreciate it.
You're from Tempo, and we'll learn a lot about strategy and your software. Not so much about individual products, but how they tie together and form a solution. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let's be honest, like nobody cares about a product, right? It's in the real world.
You need a solution, yeah. You need to solve the fucking problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we didn't want to curse, yeah. I'm sorry.
I don't mind. If you don't mind, I don't mind.
It's going to be a public video, so I'll try to tame down.
No worries. I curse all the time when I'm on customer calls. They love it. It keeps it real. You got to be human.
Okay, let's talk about problems that we want to solve apart from products. You are a product company, quite a big one, probably one of the biggest in the Atlassian ecosystem. But let's talk about problems, solutions, strategies where you think you can help.
Yeah. So what we tend to hear as a general theme, regardless of where somebody sits in an organizational hierarchy when they're coming to us, is that it's just hard to know that people are working on the right things. And they know at a team level, and they know at a team of team levels that they're working on what their leadership has told them to do. But knowing that it matters towards the organizational values is very difficult. And it's because it's hard to track that and have it tied together so that, when your executives are planning for, big objectives for the next 3 years and how that ties into work that's broken down into, maybe it's a combination of hardware development cycles and also agile release trains, like all in the same organization, right? People having all their own systems of work and doing what's best for the unit to build, but not having it tied together towards that larger level objective. Mm-hmm. And that tends to come up really common. So it tends to be struggles there, and then struggles knowing what could we commit to and be true to ourselves about what we're committing to. So not over-committing or under-committing on work, not holding too many reserves back. And so Tempo has and the Tempo ecosystem has a very good understanding of the way teams work and what teams have available to them. And then, so where we come into play there is helping tie that together with knowing what's important to an organization and actually having tangible information around the teams to say, yeah, we can do this, we can get this done, or we can't get that done. So let's make sure we're not over-promising to people on what's going to be possible.
Let me try to rephrase that in simple terms. So Atlassian's calling this full traceability, or maybe you could call it transparency. I have a CEO, high-level manager sitting on the top, and I have people at the bottom of the hierarchy who are actually doing real work, and we want them to be connected so that the CEO has a good feeling, okay, everyone's going to help our mission, our goals, our values, and the people on the bottom understand, why am I doing this? So, well, what is this for? This feels like busy work. Yeah, I don't want to do that. And then they can drill up kind of and find out, it's this strategic initiative.
You got it.
Now it makes sense and so on. And how's that different from what Atlassian's doing? I would say Atlassian has a very similar story. So
the biggest advantage for our customers is that it doesn't matter the way that your teams work. So if you have a combination of agile teams and non-agile teams and waterfall teams, et cetera, our products allow people to be met where they are, right? So if they're on a transformative journey of tying different ways of work together, or if they have hardware requirement teams that are always going to be that long-term old school project management style because they're physical dependencies in the real world that are going to matter for the project timing. But then you've got firmware engineers or software engineers doing a web application that goes alongside it, doing things, and maybe they're doing Scrum or Kanban, right? But all of that work is still being tracked. And when they're doing it inside of Jira, inside of the ecosystem, we're able to kind of capture that and wrap it and put it into business terms. So rephrasing the work. So that's what you mentioned before of the individual. Why does this matter? Like, how does this roll up? The individuals can be in any type of way of work, but it still rolls up to those objectives for us.
Okay, cool. Let's talk a bit more operational. Like, what do people actually do with their software? And can we hear at least some product names that form that whole thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we try to take a persona-driven approach. So we'll start with the executives, right? So executives need to know quickly how things are progressing, whether things are on track, and whether teams are working on the right thing. So the executive suite tends to work in more the strategic roadmaps layer. So it used to be known as RoadMonk, part of the Tempo ecosystem for about 2 years now. So now it rebranded as strategic roadmaps about a year ago. So that's the idea of sort of boardroom ready presentations of all of the information inside of Jira, or maybe in other ways or other work management platforms too rolling up. But Jira is the richest integration we've got. And then using that to be able to quickly see what's important and what teams are working on. But then under the hood, when you get more like the program management, the engineering leadership, they tend to be working more in structure or capacity planner, where the use case is taking sort of like putting Excel into Jira and also putting Microsoft Project into Jira. So saving all that time of extracting and figuring out, all right, what do we have capacity for? What can we pivot all this data on? And being able to say, all right, this is real-time Jira data. I'm able to draw my insights from there. And then as it kind of steps down the stack more, where a person might know the individuals that are doing the work, they tend to be more inside of, let's say, a capacity planner, where they're looking and saying, all right, who's on vacation? What are our holiday schemes? I have international teams. We have different countries where people are allowed to work different numbers of hours a week, team leads, et cetera, right? But all of that kind of, it bubbles up to that executive layer. So it's using that metadata around where people are available and what resources we've got.
Capacity management is definitely something that is more operational than strategic, but it's a evergreen, I would say. I've heard that. I'm in the ecosystem since 2009, and it has been a topic from day one.
Yeah, it's a hard problem to solve.
You're kind of like the go-to solution for that, right?
Yeah, it's us or Excel, right? It's like that's usually when we're talking to prospects. That's where our customers are usually. That's what they're shifting off of, because they're
or paper maybe
It's.
I've heard that Lufthansa was using paper until very recently, and then from paper they created a PDF file, and then they disseminated the PDF file to all the flight attendants and so on.
That's wild.
So there's some flexibility to that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can always erase it. It's
and there's let's not talk about paper. That's philosophical. Okay, so I understand the until the capacity planning, but there's way more operationally that you can do with simple software systems.
Yeah, it sort of depends on, as you can imagine, being a marketplace vendor, and I mentioned earlier, kind of being able to meet people where they are. Sort of depends on what problem they're trying to solve first, right? So if somebody is looking to solve a problem around capacity management, capacity planner makes sense. But there's also, the financial impacts of the work that's being done, and knowing, particularly maybe like in non-agile spaces where time tracking is important, and knowing here's how much time we're spending on things, not because we're billing somebody for it, which is a definitely strong use case for like pro services, but being able to
understand. Software is used for that.
Exactly. That was actually the big starting point for a lot of it. Was a lot of professional services customers were using it there. But then that's kind of expanded out where product organizations need to know, like, what are we spending our time on, and where is how can we get the best tax credits for it, right? Like just doing CapEx, OpEx stuff on there. So being able to tie in sort of that integration between capacity planner to see, all right, what can we do? Timesheets to know, all right, what have we done? And financial manager to know, okay, what are we forecasting our spend to be here? Are we on budget for what we need to do? Are we on time for what we need to do? And are we spending the money on the right things, right? So are we spending money on the initiatives that we've deemed are most important up at that executive layer, right? So taking that hierarchy up and down that we talked about before, and knowing the data that we've curated inside of a structure, and that is our source of truth of a program that we're working on, or a group of initiatives, right? And having that be what's tied in for our financial manager portfolio to know, all right, here's how much we've spent on it. And it's the same body of work that's rolling up to our roadmap. So now everybody's looking at the same data set. You don't have to worry about a bunch of JQL queries going stale, or miscommunicating plans, right? Even if the finance team is working outside of Jira, right? They're working in some sort of SAP system or EAP system, and maybe they're extracting the data from Jira with our Power BI connectors and running a report on there. But inside of Jira, the project and program management team still has that directional accuracy of what the spend is, so that there's not any huge surprise when the finance team that doesn't want to live in Jira, but you're still seeing the same information, right? You're still seeing the same source of truth around where the effort has gone and where the money has been spent.
Yeah. Something, if you're looking at this and hearing that, it sounds a little bit, or may sound for a customer like management talk, but what he's saying, there is software behind that. So you may want to check out those details, because we won't be able to fit them into the video.
Sure.
But if I hear time tracking, you have this is the core of right? Like Tempo time tracker
it was where it started. It was where it all started. Yeah.
And it's probably still the product that you earn the most money with. And then we didn't talk explicitly about structure, which will help me build a way more complex structure of tasks.
Right.
But that ties into this transparency and organization thing. You didn't. I don't know. Do you still use those names of individual products?
We do.
Financial planner.
Yeah.
There's been different names.
Because it was budgets in DC, and then it was cost tracker, and now it's financial manager. Yeah, there's a lot of rebranding, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of so the renaming of them actually kind of goes along with the story around where Tempo has come over the past 3 to 5 years, between all of these products that were originally products, the original suite of the time tracking, the planning, and the financial manager, they'd been built together for a long time, right? But being able to tell that broader story around what is a portfolio and who cares about the different layers of it. So tying in basically the strategic roadmaps at the top, structure is the hub, right? Tying everything together, and then your timesheets for your actuals, capacity planner for planning, financial manager for the cost. And then custom charts for building out easy dashboards, and then all the BI connectors. We just call them the BI connectors because there's so many of them. But the Power BI tends to be the one most people use in the AV system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see some stuff.
Yeah, let's see some stuff. Yeah. Well, let's look at a couple products here, right? So we mentioned sort of that stack of starting at the executive layer, the strategic roadmaps. So what we're looking at here is representations of things from an OKR perspective or business outcomes, language that matters in the real world versus the description of a specific epic, right? Because they can get too granular. When you're talking at that level and then you're reporting it up to a strategic layer, it's tough to know, what does that really mean? Yeah. But under the hood, I like to use let's say you've got a one-time password encryption stuff taking place, right? So security improvements that inform one body of work might inform several outcomes for an organization, right? So you might have objectives around security, reputation, and you might have certifications you're going for. There might be a requirement on a statement of work, right? But one epic, one body of work might actually be moving the needle forward on all of those. So being able to have that many-to-many relationship towards the real world is really, really common out there versus one vertical hierarchy.
Yeah.
So inside strategic roadmaps, this is all tying to Jira data under the hood using a structure. So when if we have a need to just quickly pivot data, so I've got this by our hierarchy and then our status, but let's say we wanted to group it by, let's say project, why not? Right. The idea is all of the metadata under the hood from Jira, being able to quickly pivot and then represent visually.
Yeah, okay. It's a different view now.
Yeah, different views. But the idea is the people that tend to live in here is usually product managers building roadmaps, working with product team, product leadership, and then representing that to stakeholders. But under the hood, what's happening is they're communicating with engineering leadership and the delivery teams. And then inside of Jira, those teams are working in usually, let's say, structure to build out hierarchies of work so that I mentioned that one-to-many relationship or the many-to-many relationship. We've got all of these objectives around, enhancing productivity or key results around expanding global marketplace, whatever the work may be. But then,
what is a RAG visual?
So I think I mentioned before. One of the things you can do is essentially having Excel inside of Jira. So this is a formula that's running essentially to say it's probably saying I wrote it 2 months ago, so I can't remember exactly what's in it, right? But it's basically pulling to say, all right, what's our delivery timeline? Are we 6 months into the work? Do we need to get it done in, it's based on a formula. It's pulling like, are we ahead of schedule?
Yeah.
Are we behind schedule? Right. But now you don't have to toggle it.
Yeah. Like
it's
a traffic light kind.
Yeah. So it's like a traffic light status or a system health. Right. And the idea is you define what the health is or if something's at risk one time.
Yeah.
And then it's shared across every structure. Right. So if I've got plenty of these things built out around, ways of defining health and risk. And then once those are in place, you can represent them no matter whose body of work you're looking at. So, and then one of the cool things we're announcing tomorrow, one of the Rovo agents released is to actually help you write structure formulas, which is cool because that's been one of the gaps of, Excel is powerful, formulas are powerful, structure formulas are powerful, but there's always a learning curve whenever there's anything with scripting involved.
Yeah.
So
you can tell a Rovo agent what you want. And
you got
it. Put in the structure.
Yep. And it's free too. So actually all of the Tempo Rovo agents that we're announcing are free too, which is so cool. For existing structure customers, huge time saver for them to be able to really lower the bar.
Time to move to the cloud, my friends.
Indeed.
Germany is still a lot of lacking customers.
There's a lot of data security requirements, a lot of privacy requirements. So it makes sense. So the idea is you've got these work breakdowns. It doesn't matter what team's doing the work and it ties under there. And then building out these hierarchies without being stuck in here's your parent, here's your initiative, here's your team, whatever it is, right? You can use business words and that's rolling back to the roadmap. And then when you're tracking time on it and when you're planning time forward on it, all that then can inform your finances on it. And then the scope and the data source of what's inside Financial Manager. Again.
Oh, that's budget creep, yeah?
Yeah.
Scope creep, all of that. That's an IT project. I can see it from the visuals, yeah? We thought we start down here, but...
it just kept going. So, we set our milestones. We know what we expect to spend. We know where our CapEx, OpEx spend is on it, right?
But while this is funny, it's also telling me that this is really actionable. You didn't explain, and I could understand. Yeah,
I love showing Financial Manager because it's so intuitive, right? It's just like, oh yeah, we're in trouble.
That shit, just like the typical IT project.
Yeah, it checks out, right? So, but I mentioned the sort of the hierarchy and the scope here, where the Tempo suite all comes together. When we're building out our structures and when we're building out our reports in Financial Manager, or when we're building out dashboards and custom charts, we've set it up the ecosystem now so that the structure can be the hub. So the effort of curating what's in Jira, you do that once, and now you've got that same source of truth everywhere. So now we're saying, all right, here are our structures. This is now defining the work. I don't have to do to maintain.
Let me ask you a mean question.
Yeah, I love.
So I do understand that such a chart will give me a very cool overview for the CEO, for C-level people, for managers, and so on. But it doesn't help if the Jira content is garbage. So what would you recommend to customers to make sure that everything is à jour?
Data hygiene is huge. There are two things we recommend around it. The first is pretty much exclusively to work with a solutions partner to help with that, right? Because people like you at Sieber, right, you have expertise in what is the best practice around your Jira hygiene, right? Now, in addition to that, we recommend the prospect of meeting teams where they are, right? So it's if the data is garbage, it's hard to capture. To start with the simplest commonality that you need to be able to make a decision. Because yes, data hygiene is important and having garbage data makes things difficult. But if you have enough to make a decision, to make a step forward, start there. You don't have to go lift and replace the entire way that all of the Jira projects are configured, right?
I like the anecdote from Jeff Bezos on that, who's asking often, is it a one-way door or a two-way door? And if it's a two-way door, you can go back.
Yeah.
And so the decision isn't really consequential.
Right.
If it's a one-way door, once you close it, you can go back.
Yeah.
And that's if you have some data and some is garbage,
right,
and it's a two-way door, that's you're good.
You're okay. Yeah,
and,
give it a shot.
Thanks for the shout out. And I think it's adoption is kind of like the key. If people use Jira like a tool that is helpful in daily life,
Yeah.
you will have no problems with data hygiene.
Yeah.
If Jira is only used when management's asking for a report,
Yeah.
you'll have a garbage report no matter what. Because it's impossible to update all these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's something that never stops because let's talk about Confluence. If you have Confluence and someone writes something, now you have some documentation that you didn't have before, which is awesome. But now you want the whole department to write something. And once you have the whole department, you want the whole company.
Yep.
And once you have the whole company, you want them to work on this daily. And once you have them work on this daily, you want to work them every hour. And it never stops.
Yeah.
And
and then there's too much data to find what's important at that.
That's where Tempo comes in. I think it's much easier to collate, to aggregate things than not having a digital representation of my
100%. Yeah.
And also, to be honest, this is true bureaucracy. No one wants to document their work.
Yeah.
It must be a collateral thing.
Yeah.
It must be part of like...
As soon as you start to measure the productivity slows down, right? It's like
You have to bake it into your process so that the process helps so much that I can bear the bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy is automated where it can and only little where I actually have to do and write something.
Right.
Stand-ups is a good point to tie in data hygiene, for example. But we're getting off track. Is there something that you'll announce that is interesting or that you would want to share that should be part of the video?
Yeah. So I don't know if I can demo it because of the PC machinery. So I will, but I'll talk about it. So at the keynote tomorrow, so anybody watching this video will see this.
It's going to be a little bit later.
Yeah, some editing, right? So we are announcing a new adaptive planning solution. So everything we've talked about around knowing how much things cost, knowing how much effort people have committed to things historically, knowing what your velocity is, knowing what team commitments you have. So we're announcing a new product around adaptive planning that will take all of that metadata, everything about the Tempo ecosystem, right? Everything about how we know how teams plan, right? And allow you to make predictive schedules around what's happening without having to spend, we'll put it this way. The process of doing quarterly planning takes, let's say, 30 to 100 people, depending on the organization size, a week of fully dedicated time in a room or a Slack channel all together. And it's very expensive time. And there's a lot of competing priorities, competing egos. So being able to take the actual data that's been gathered in the Jira ecosystem for all these years, use that to generate a predictive plan. So now we can say, all right, here's a plan that we think is relevant for our customers. Let's take a conservative estimate of, all right, here's what we want to put out publicly so that we're not going to disappoint our stakeholders. And here's what we'll probably be able to do over the next year. But what happens if we take a more aggressive push internally? And what if we had the bandwidth to double our capacity? If we doubled our team size, what could we get done? Or what if we only focus on our highest priority items? Like what if we were laser focused on our top 5 initiatives? How fast could we get them out the door? And so we're having a big announcement coming tomorrow, right?
When I was in university, I don't know whether this translates. It was called Monte Carlo simulation.
Yes. So you're spot on. So they one of our products that we've had for a while called Portfolio Manager does Monte Carlo simulations, and that is the engine behind this, right? So our Portfolio Manager solution is now tying in with all of the other pieces of what we've been collecting in the Tempo ecosystem and the Jira ecosystem, and it's running Monte Carlo simulations, and it's spinning out, here's your scenarios of what you could do, and here's your best case, worst case scenario, because there's never 100% predictability, right?
Yeah.
So like, what's our window?
That's interesting. I'm going to check that out, and you should. Last mean question.
Yeah.
You did well with the first, so this is going to be even meaner. Forge, Atlassian Forge, and Atlassian Connect deprecation. Yep. So what you've showed at some point is outside of the Jira core software, and definitely needs egress. So there needs to be a Tempo server, and customers will see their data leave to a Tempo server, and then it will go back into Jira or be displayed on Tempo server, whatever. And Atlassian is working heavily on apps that have a badge called runs on Atlassian, which is zero egress, so no data goes out, and way more privacy and data control for the customer.
Right.
And with that, Atlassian has announced that at the end of 2026, they will deprecate Atlassian Connect APIs, and everyone will have to use Forge APIs, which will mean that Tempo will have to rewrite a significant part of their software stack. Because all the APIs that you're using in the cloud will be deprecated. You may have some Forge APIs that you don't have to rewrite, but it's going to be a tiny minority. That's unwanted homework at first, right? And for a big vendor like
but it's table stakes now, so it's like it has to be done. So we have a couple of our products that are planned to be.
Let me finish that. So customers may ask, and we have customers asking us, am I secure using Tempo software? Or will that go extinct? Will that go broke when Atlassian deprecates those API points? So will Tempo be ready for the new Atlassian Forge generation in time?
Yes. We were actually pleasantly surprised internally with some news at how much progress the engineering teams have already made towards it. At some point, we had heard that there was going to be readiness towards I think somewhere middle of this year, and then completed middle of next year to make sure we were ahead of schedule. But there are actually a couple of products that I believe are on schedule to be completed with a Forge migration by the end of 2025. And there are two levels of Forge readiness. I can't remember what they are, so apologies on that. But yeah, it's on track, and it's super important for Tempo.
And Atlassian has also not announced explicitly how they want to do egress, because some of the things will still need egress. So you will need your own server. So at this point, we only know how apps will work that have no egress. And hopefully Tempo will find some ways to make existing software be runs on Atlassian. But some stuff will have egress.
Our product and engineering teams have been working very closely with the Atlassian teams for the past, forever, but specifically around Forge for the past year after some of the announcements at Team 24.
Patrick, how can people reach you?
So you can reach me on LinkedIn. My last Patrick Savago. I'm one of the only Savagos in the world, so it's easy to find. Or patrick.savago@tempo.io. You can shoot me an email. And happy to help out.
Or you contact Zebra Group.
By all means.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Thanks, Martin.